Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news and rumor video to discuss. Like that, some signings from the past couple of days, some injury updates, some waiver updates, plus some interesting trade rumors involving the Ducks, Sabres, Bruins, Kraken, and the Carolina Hurricanes. And all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without you guys, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, really support the channel, and hopefully leave a comment in the comment section below so I'll discuss in today's video. And also don't forget to stay tuned for our March 7th trade deadline video. Going to be taking around 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time, and I'm going to do a couple hour stream going over all of the trades that happen on trade deadline day, so definitely don't forget to stay tuned for that. Put it in your calendars and don't forget to check in. But definitely we got a couple of interesting things here to talk about. We got some signings, injury updates, and waiver updates to talk about here first. So as usual, we're going to start over here with the signings. Two interesting signings with West Canadian teams, and they were actually quite bigger signings. It wasn't like ELCs or low-end signings. So the first one was in Vancouver. We've seen the Canucks make a lot of interesting extensions over the past couple of days. We saw them extend Drew O'Connor and Marcus Peterson. Both are really good extensions for the Vancouver Canucks. Well, they've made another intriguing extension, and that was with one of their goaltenders. Now we know that Kevin Lankinen was signed just before training camp started to sort of be the starter while Demko was injured, and after Demko got back, Lankinen was playing so well they decided to put Steelhouse in the minors, give him some valuable AHL experience. Well, they had Lankinen be the backup. Well, with Demko being in and out of the lineup due to injuries, Lankinen has played a whole bunch of games this year for the Canucks and has actually looked quite good. So the Canucks have been able to reward him with an extension. They signed him to a 5-year extension with an AAV of $4.5 million. Now this is a massive extension. Now I know the Canucks have liked Lankinen, and I think Lankinen has proven himself this year as well as last year over in Nashville that he can be a decent goaltender. But 5 years with $4.5 million might be a little bit too much. It really depends on what the Canucks are going to do with Lankinen. If Lankinen is supposed to be the backup to Demko, then they are paying him way too much money, because I think a backup will be somewhere between $2.5–3 million, maybe a little bit less. $4.5 million for a backup is a really awful lot of money for your Canucks. If they're paying him to be the starter and they're considering potentially moving on from Demko in the next year or two and have Lankinen be the starter while Steelhouse continues to learn how to be the starter for the future, I think that could be a really good pickup there for Canucks. 5 years might be a little bit too expensive. I would have gone maybe 3 or 4 years instead of 5. But still, it's a decent sign there for Canucks. Last year, Lankinen played in 24 games with Nashville, putting up a .908 save percentage and 2.82 GAA, which was pretty good. So far this year, he's played in 34 games. He's only 3 shy of his career high for games played in a single season, and he has a 2.53 GAA and a .905 save percentage. The GAA is currently his best in his career. So Lankinen's had a fantastic start to the season. I think he could be a really solid goaltender. I'm just not sure if they're paying him to be the starter or if they're paying him to be a backup. If they're paying him to be a starter, this is a fantastic deal. Maybe 1 or 2 years too much, but still, it's a pretty good deal. If they're paying him to be a backup, that's a really expensive backup. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there. But the Canucks, after a solid performance so far this year from Lankinen, have signed him to a 5-year extension. And the other sign we're going to get to here today was one that I saw just before we started recording this video, and that was Winnipeg. One of Winnipeg's pending UFAs has been signed. That's Lauzon and Namestnikov. Now Namestnikov, versatile guy, can play anywhere in the middle six. He's been their second line center for the past little while because they don't really have a whole bunch of really good second line center options. I mean, Cole Perfetti could play there as well, Adam Lowry, but they didn't want to take him off the third line center role, so they put Namestnikov as the second line center. He's actually worked out quite well over the past year and a half playing in Winnipeg, so they just wound up signing him to a 2-year extension with an AAV of $3 million. Now for a versatile middle six forward who can play really anywhere in their top 9, I don't think this is a bad deal at all. Namestnikov's a solid forward, and I think he could be worth that sort of money. So far this year has 10 goals and 20 assists for 30 points since 53 games, which is only 3 shy of a career high at the NHL level in goals, and only 7 high of a career high in points, which he had last year when he had 11 goals and 37 points in 78 games with Winnipeg. So Namestnikov has been extraordinarily well in Winnipeg. He's been a really fantastic, versatile middle six forward, can play anywhere the Winnipeg Jets need him. And I think given what he brings and where he can play in the line, lineup. $3 million for a versatile middle six forward is not half bad. And Namestnikov, like we said, is having some of his better seasons in Winnipeg. So all in all, I think this is a really good sign there for the Jets. And I think Namestnikov will continue to be a really solid middle six forward. So some interesting signings from our past couple of days. But Lankinen in Vancouver and Namestnikov in Winnipeg have both been signed to extensions. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. When it comes to the injury updates, we do have a couple of things to talk about here. So first, in the National Predators organization, Jeremy Lauzon, who has been out for a month and a half with a lower body injury, will be out for the next 4 to 6 months due to that lower body injury, and is now out for the rest of the regular season. So it's a bad blow there for the Predators. Lauzon's been a really solid player there for the Predators, so I think that sort of takes him out of the running for potentially being traded before a deadline. Like, I think this might be more of an offseason move if the Predators were to move Lauzon. So a bad blow there from the Predators to lose a potential trade chip, but also a solid third pair, hard-hitting defenseman to injury for the rest of the year. And Adam Wilsby, who had missed a few games with the upper body injury, was placed in IR and will also be out for the rest of the year. So the Predators take a hit on the blue line, as both Wilsby and Lauzon, who have been serviceable third pair defensemen this year, are going to miss the remainder of the regular season. So it's a bad blow there for Nashville. Vancouver's Thatcher Demko, who left the Canucks last game before the break with a lower body injury, won't travel with the team and is out week to week. So it's a horrible blow there for the Canucks to see Demko not be able to play for the next little while. While Quinn Hughes will miss his 5th straight game on Saturday due to a hand injury, and Elias Pettersson is dealing with an injury in his day-to-day, and he may miss tonight's game as well. So a bad blow there for the Canucks, as they may be without Elias Pettersson. They will continue to be out with Quinn Hughes, and Thatcher Demko, who got injured in the game right before the break, is still injured. So some interesting and bad injury blows there for the Canucks. Jacob Markstrom, who has been out for a month now with a knee injury, and Jonas Siegenthaler, who has missed 2 weeks after leaving a game with undisclosed injury just before the break, have both been placed in injury reserve. So it's not too surprising for Markstrom. He's already missed a month. As soon as he's healthy, he can go back into game action. So not too surprising, that sort of just to create some roster flexibility for the Devils. Siegenthaler's a little bit more concerning. He only missed a couple of games before the break, so hopefully Siegenthaler won't be out for an over long period of time, and neither will Markstrom, but interesting to see both those guys replaced in injury reserve. Austin Shelley McAvoy, who we talked about in our last video, suffered an injury, kept him out of the USA's final game due to upper body injury. He had an infection, and he's going to be out week to week now for the Boston Bruins. So it's a horrible blow there. Bruins' top defenseman is going to be out for a longer period of time, at least a couple of weeks. So bad blow there for the Bruins to lose McAvoy. Sean Durzi, who missed 4 months due to a shoulder injury, is scheduled to be activated off of injury reserve and return to game action on Saturday. So really great news there for the Utah Hockey Club to get Durzi back. Durzi was a really great defenseman early on before suffering that injury. So to see him go back into the top 4, it's an amazing boost for Utah's blue line. David Reinbacher, who had been placed on season opening injury reserve and had missed the entirety of the season, 4.5 months due to knee surgery, was activated off of injury reserve and assigned to the minors. So Reinbacher still needs to have some development time, so he'll go back to the AHL and get that development time he needs. So interesting note there, but Reinbacher is now healthy and has been sent back down to the minors. Pittsburgh's Evgeny Malkin, who missed 6 games before the break due to an injury, should be activated off of injury reserve and should return to game action on Saturday. So that could be a really big boost for the Penguins to get their solid second line center back into game action on Saturday. Max Pacioretty left practice recently with an injury in his day-to-day, so that's a bad blow there for the Leafs bottom 6 to lose a solid goal scorer like Pacioretty. Ryan Pulock was recently practicing in a non-contact jersey, but should be able to go for Sunday's game for the New York Islanders, so that could be a really big boost there for the Islanders to get a solid top 4 defenseman back into the lineup. Tampa Bay's JJ Moser, who has missed the past 2.5 months due to a lower body injury, will be activated and return to game action on Sunday, so that's a really big boost there for Tampa to get JJ Moser back, who was a really good young defender early on this season before he suffered that injury. Alex Wennberg, who was missed a few weeks with an upper body injury, will get back into action at some point during the Sharks' upcoming road trip, so hopefully it won't take too long, but it sounds like Wennberg is nearing a return for the San Jose Sharks. Igor Shesterkin, who has missed a few weeks with upper body injury, should be activated and return to game action on Saturday, so that could be a really big boost there for the Rangers to get their starting level goaltender back into the lineup. Flores Maki Samoskevich, who missed 3 games due to an illness, should get back into game action as well on Saturday, so that could be a really big boost there. Samoskevich is a solid middle 6 forward. Josh Morrissey missed the Four Nations final due to an illness in his day-to-day, so hopefully he won't miss too much time, especially for the Winnipeg Jets, but it's a bad blow there that Team Canada had to suffer during the Four Nations final, but also that the Winnipeg Jets may have to suffer for a couple of games. Columbus's Boone Jenner, who missed 4.5 months the entirety of the regular season so far due to a shoulder injury, was active off of injury injury reserve and should return to game action on Saturday, while Kirill Marchenko, who has missed a few games due to a jaw injury, was also activated and should also return to game action on Saturday. So Marchenko's been a really underrated and really excellent talent on the forward group for the Jackets, and Jenner is the Blue Jackets captain. So to see both of these guys get activated off of injury reserve and get back into game action, it was really a big boost there for the Jackets forward group. Philadelphia's Ryan Poehling, who has missed a month due to an upper body injury, and Yegor Zamula, who missed 8 games due to an upper body injury, were both activated and should return to game action on Saturday. So that's really a big boost there for Philadelphia to see both those guys get back into the game action. Seattle's Yanni Gourde, who is dealing with a sports hernia, has been placed on long-term injury reserve and may be out beyond the trade deadline. So that's a bad blow there for the Kraken. Gourde is one of their potential trade chips, so this is going to be out for any length of period of time is really bad. And Los Angeles' Mikey Anderson, who missed 4 games due to a finger injury, will be activated off of injury reserve and return to game action on Saturday. So that's a really big boost there for the Kings, as Anderson's a really solid top pair shutdown defenseman for the Kings. So definitely lots of intriguing injury updates from our past couple days. Good to see guys like Jenner, Moser, Durzi, and Shesterkin all return to game action, and hopefully they don't look too bad in their returns. With bad news to see guys like Demko, Hughes, Lauzon, and Gourde all be out with injuries, and hopefully they won't be out for an overly long period of time. But some interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a quick waiver update. Only saw a couple of waiver updates from our past couple of days. Back over on Thursday, we saw 2 players we placed on waivers. That was Tyson Barrie in Calgary and Dennis Cholowski in New York I. Now for Cholowski, he had been mostly an AHL player, was called up due to injuries on the blue line for the Islanders. He had spent a couple of games at the NHL level, actually looked quite good. Now I thought that if there was a team who was in desperate need of a defenseman, maybe Cholowski could get claimed, but I thought he was most likely going to clear, given the fact that he's mostly an AHL player at this point in time. Barrie, on the other hand, he's an experienced guy. I know he hasn't had the greatest of seasons last year or this year. Last year in Nashville, this year in Calgary, but he's still a very experienced guy. He knows what it takes to win. He's a serviceable third pair defenseman who has some offensive upside. So I thought maybe there would be a chance, given the fact he's only on a 1-year, $1 million deal, that a team or two could wind up taking him. But surprisingly, both guys did wind up clearing. Cholowski, not too surprisingly, he's more of an AHLer at this point in time anyway, and he'll be sent to the minors, and he can continue his career at the AHL level for now, away his next call-up option. Barry's a little more surprising. I thought he would wind up being claimed, but he didn't, and now he will wind up going to the AHL for the Calgary Flames. Maybe he gets dealt before deadline in a trade. We'll have to wait and see, but interesting note there that Barrie went on waivers and didn't get claimed, so interesting note there. But those are the only 2 waiver updates from the past couple of days, as Cholowski in New York I and Barrie in Calgary were both placed on waivers, and they both cleared waivers, so interesting note there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So next, going over to a couple of trade rumors, we're going to start over here with the Boston Bruins. According to James Murphy, he was recently talking about the Boston Bruins. He knows a couple of things about Boston Bruins and some of the things that the Boston Bruins could be doing, and he says that he was talking to an NHL executive that says that trade interest in Morgan Geekie, who's one of the Bruins forwards, as in the final year of his contract, is gaining a lot of interest. Now, according to Murphy, he says that the market for Geekie is growing, and given the fact he's on the younger side of things, it's not just playoff-bound teams. He says that even teams who are maybe a little bit further out of the playoff race are also expressing interest in Morgan Geekie and may also have some major interest in acquiring him. Now, there's some amount of teams that sounds like have interest in Geekie. I think there's a very likely chance that we could see a Geekie trade before the trade deadline, and I think that the Bruins could actually get a really good return. Like, Geekie's actually having a pretty good season this year, already has new career high in goals with 17, and is on pace to hit around 45-50 points, which is pretty good for a guy who has been mostly in his career a bottom 6 forward. So I think a lot of teams could benefit from him. I think the Bruins get like a 2nd round pick and a really good prospect for Geekie if they were to consider trading him. And it sounds like it's not just playoff teams, but it is other teams maybe out of the playoff race too who do have some interest. And that makes sense to me. Geekie's on the younger side of things. If a team could acquire him, maybe sign him to like a 3 to 4 year deal at like $3 to $4 million, I think a lot of teams would have a lot of major interest in trying to do that. So we're going to have to wait and see, but keep your eye on the Bruins Morgan Geekie, as there's a lot of more rumors speculating that interest is growing on him and he's a very likely trade candidate to happen before the trade deadline, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to Buffalo Sabres, according to Lysowski of the Buffalo News, he was talking about Buffalo Sabres defenseman Henri Jokiharju, and he says that after a solid performance over in Team Finland at the Four Nations tournament, he says that Jokiharju is drawing a ton of interest in the trade market. Now, Jokiharju is in the final year of his deal. He's at RFA, I think, at the end of the contract. He's only making $3.1 million, so there's a lot of potential interest. He's already, I think, at this point in time, a solid third pair right shot defenseman, and I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years' time he could still be a solid second pair right shot defenseman. So I can see why a lot of teams might have some interest in him. Sabres now don't have too many right shot defensemen on that team. They have mostly left side guys, so I'm not exactly sure if they'd want to part with Jokiharju, but Jokiharju's sort of been falling lower and lower in the depth charts in Buffalo, so maybe a fresh start could help the former 2017 first round pick. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, I could see Jokiharju get dealt. I know he's on the younger side of things, but we know that Buffalo needs to make some sort of shakeups, and Jokiharju sort of falling down the depth chart a little bit on the blue line side of things. So I think I could see Jokiharju get moved. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but given the fact he's going to be an RFA, I think there's a possibility. And also not sure if it's a move that happens before deadline or maybe in the offseason closer to the draft. We're going to have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Jokiharju. He's a potential option here to get dealt. Next, going over to the Carolina Hurricanes. According to Elliotte Friedman on his recent podcast, he was talking about Mikko Rantanen, and he says that if there isn't a contract in place, there is still a possibility the Canes could wind up flipping Mikko Rantanen at this year's trade deadline. Now, we talked about this. There was a report from, I think it was Nick Kyprios, and we reported on it a couple of weeks back, saying that if Mikko Rantanen is not extended, the Canes don't want a repeat situation of last year when they had Jake Gensel and he walked as a free agent, so they might be open to flipping him. According to Elliotte Friedman, it's a possibility. Now, it sounds like they may try and still sign him. They have a couple of weeks still to do so, but if we get to like March 5th, March 6th, and there's still no indication on if Rantanen's signed or not, I think there's a very likely possibility we could see the Canes flip him. Now, with the return that the Avalanche got for Rantanen, it was a solid young player in Natchez. It was a younger type player, more of a prospect-like guy in Drury, a second and a 7th round pick. Could the Carolina Hurricanes pull off some sort of deal that gets them similar things? I think it's possible. I'm not exactly sure what teams would have interest. Like, I think there would be a ton of teams who would have major interest in Rantanen should he be potentially on the market again and flipped by Carolina. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. A Rantanen extension seems to be extremely important to Carolina, and if they don't get that in the next couple of weeks, there's a possibility out there we could see the Canes flip Rantanen for something else. So we're going to have to keep your eye on that, but keep your eye on Rantanen. Potentiality there that if his extension doesn't come in before the March 7th trade deadline, he could be flipped by Carolina, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to the Seattle Kraken. According to David Pagnotta of TheForcePlayer.com, he was talking about Jared McCann. Now, we talked about this in either our last video or one of the recent videos that we've done, and we talked about how Jared McCann was a name that a lot of people were actually speculating could get moved, but Elliotte Friedman put some cold water on that, saying that it was teams checking in on McCann, not the other way around, and the Kraken weren't shopping McCann. But according to David Pagnotta, he says that he's heard McCann's name in trade rumors. He says that he's heard McCann's name potentially even as much, if not more, than Brandon Tanev, who's a very likely trade candidate for the Kraken, and that has led some people to believe there's a strong possibility that he could wind up getting dealt before this year's trade deadline. Now, he says it's not as likely as Tanev, given the fact Tanev's a pending UFA, and McCann's a lot more important to that Kraken team, but he does say that there's a possibility out there that we could see McCann trade. He doesn't say it's a guarantee by any means, given how good of a player McCann is and how much term he has on this deal, but he says that there's some sense around the league that McCann could be a player who is had. Now, personally, I don't think the Kraken should move McCann. Former 40 goal scorer has been their best expansion pick from the expansion draft, so I really did like McCann on the Kraken. I don't think they should move him. I think it would have to take a massive ask, like maybe a first round pick, roster player, young stud prospect, and maybe even something else to pry McCann away. But as we talked about in that video, if guys like Zegras doesn't get moved, if Nelson gets extended, there's not a whole bunch of centers on this year's trade market. So if a lot of teams don't wind up getting those centers that they're trying to go after right now, could they circle back and offer big returns for McCann? I think it's a possibility. So personally, I don't think McCann should be leaving Seattle. I think he should stay right in Seattle where he's had some of his better seasons, but it seems like it's a possibility he could wind up getting dealt. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on McCann. He's a possibility to get dealt in the not too distant future. And lastly, going over to the Anaheim Ducks. There have been 3 potential trades being mentioned around the Anaheim Ducks. There have been recent reports I've seen mentioning 3 potential Anaheim Ducks trades with different teams. Now, according to a couple of recent reports, the Anaheim Ducks scouts have recently been scouting the AHL affiliates for the Pittsburgh Penguins during the Four Nations break, and that has led a lot of people to think that maybe the Ducks and Penguins could hook up on a deal. Some people said maybe guys like Trevor Zegras, Pavel Mintyukov, and Mason McTavish could be potential guys that the Penguins are trying to target. We know that Kyle Dubas wants to try and get this team to be younger. Ducks have a whole bunch of younger pieces. Now, I could definitely see Zegras be a potential option there for Pittsburgh, given the fact that Zegras is a really young, skilled forward, and I think the Penguins could use something like that. I'm not sure if the Ducks would really want to part with Mintyukov or McTavish, given how good they've been this year for the Ducks. Ducks. But I definitely think there's a possibility these two teams could hook up on a deal. We know the Ducks are trying to get a little bit more improved to finally make a push for the playoffs. I know that the Penguins are in not an overly great position and want to try and get some younger pieces. So it's a possibility you could see a trade like that. I don't think they'll move McTavish or Mintnyukov, but Zegras to Pittsburgh could be an interesting concept. Going over to the Washington Capitals, I've also seen a couple of recent reports saying that Ducks could move Ryan Strome to Washington, as the Capitals could try and reunite the Strome brothers, because they already have Dylan Strome there. So could they try and pull off a deal to get Ryan Strome? That's a possibility. Now, Ryan Strome has been mentioned in the trade rumor mill over the past couple of weeks. He's got, I think, this year plus 1 or 2 more seasons left at $5 million. He's a really skilled guy. He doesn't have the best of defensive capabilities, but he can put up some really good secondary scoring. I think he could fit really well in like a middle six role in Washington. Now, the Ducks don't have to trade him, just like they didn't have to trade Vetrano last year, because he's still signed. So they don't have to move him before this year's deadline. But if they were to move him, maybe Washington's a landing spot, given the fact they already have his brother. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. I think that could actually be a really good fit there for Strome, playing with his brother in a top 9 role in Washington. I'm not exactly sure if the Capitals could do it cap-wise, but it'll be an interesting concept. I think you could definitely see it happening. And lastly, I was seeing a couple of recent reports saying that the Anaheim Ducks are potentially linked to the Winnipeg Jets, as the Jets could try and acquire Brian Dumoulin from Anaheim. We talked about how the Ducks are definitely going to be shopping Dumoulin over the next couple of weeks. He's a pending UFA. He's a veteran-type defenseman. It doesn't seem like the Ducks really have a future with him, so they definitely could try and move him. If they could get like a 4th or 3rd round pick, I think they'll be open to doing that, to try and acquire Dumoulin. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. Jets might be an interesting ad. We know they could definitely use some blue line additions. Dumoulin, I don't think would have cost a whole bunch of money, and I think it could be a serviceable third-pair defenseman that has experience of winning cups that I think could be really valuable to that Winnipeg Jets team. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but the Ducks have been linked to Pittsburgh as potentially moving off a younger piece to help Pittsburgh during their retool. They've been linked to Washington, potentially moving Ryan Strome there, and they've been linked to Winnipeg, potentially moving Brian Dumoulin to the Winnipeg Jets organization. So we're going to have to wait and see if any of these trades wind up coming through, but the Ducks have been linked to a couple of potential options, and we'll have to wait and see if they do wind up going through. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's what we're going to talk about for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. What's your opinion on all of this? Do you think the Ducks make some moves? Could Strome go to Washington? One of the Ducks' younger players go to Pittsburgh? Or Dumoulin go to Winnipeg? And if so, what do you think the Ducks could get in return for those sorts of deals? Do you see the Hurricanes moving Rantanen? And if so, what sort of a team do you think could try and acquire him? Do you see the Kraken moving McCann? And if so, what sort of return do you think the Kraken could get? And where do you think he could go? Do you see the Buffalo Sabres moving Henri Jokiharju? Do you see the Boston Bruins moving Morgan Geekie? And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the injury updates, signings, and waiver updates from our past couple days. Definitely get your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. I'm going to like this video. If you'd like to subscribe below. Thank you for your support. We know to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, and don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below, something I was discussed in today's video. I also have a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. There's a link to that down in the description below. And can I see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.